Do I hear a motion to temporarily suspend policy JJIE, Student Drug Testing Program, and JJIER, Administrative Rule, due to COVID-19?
Madam Chair, under the guidance of policy BDH, which gives the board the right to temporarily suspend board policies due to extreme emergencies, I move that the board approve the administration's request to temporarily suspend policy JJIE, Student Drug Testing Program, and JJIER, Administrative Rule, due to COVID-19. The suspension will be in effect until Lexington County COVID spread rate returns to moderate spread.
Thank you, Ms. Henson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Powers. Mr. Caldwell, do you want to explain why you're making this request?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board, and Dr. Little. You may recall in this past summer, I believe it was July, I asked for a suspension of this policy as we were beginning to see numbers creep back up. And at that time, the request that was granted was a suspension for the first semester. Turns out today is the first day of the second semester, so taking no action, that policy would be reinstated. But we are seeing just absolutely phenomenal community spread. I referenced in the notes that, and at the time that I wrote this a few days ago, we had increased over 1,400% since the day we left for winter break. That number has actually grown even more. It's over 1,600% now, from a 290 mark before the break to over 5,000 today. And because of the inherent nature of how we test the students in mass with swabs and the safety risks that would incur, along with the actual physical ability to do it when we're dealing with such high spread numbers, we are requesting that we have that policy suspended again, and this time until we are back in moderate spread.
Because I think the intention for us is to reinstate this semester is what we're hoping for.
Well, it is, if projections follow what we think they will, then hopefully this horrific spread will peak and then begin to go back down. And if it goes back down at a fairly significant rate, which we hope it will since it grew in such a significant rate, then we could very easily be back in moderate spread early spring, absolutely, before this school year's out.
So when we get back to moderate spread, I know like with the schools, you guys said 2 weeks of being in moderate spread before we do something. Is there a time limit with that, or?
Well, so we don't have to go back and forth between moderate and high. We have imposed a 2-week stay. So once we get to a particular level, then we would make sure that, because we don't want to start at one day only to have to stop at the next. So when we feel we're secure in moderate spread, we would continue with the drug testing, and that has been a 2-week window, yes.
And I apologize, I wasn't here in July for that meeting, but can you briefly just kind of tell me what goes into this drug testing? Is this like a, how involved is it? Like, what does it look like in our schools?
So by policy, we have to test 25% of our student athletes and drivers.
In middle and high school?
That's right, middle and high. Of course, not too many drivers in middle school.
Well, athletes.
That's right.
Yeah.
And at least once a month, typically twice a month, unannounced, we will send a roster that is drawn by the drug testing company. We do not draw the names. And we will say, River Bluff High School, here's your list of 8 kids that you will test today. Those kids will be
8 kids?
Well, I pull that number out. We try to keep it on pace to meet the 25% if we were doing this all year long.
25% in a year?
That's correct.
Okay, just trying to
When
understand.
whatever the number is, we gather those students, we go and get those students and bring them to the nurse's station, and they are giving a mouth swab. It's not a urine test, it's not a hair follicle test. It is done collectively, so a student has a device that looks similar to a toothbrush.
Okay.
And it's put in the mouth. It is
By the student or the nurse?
By the student.
Okay.
It is then collected into a vial, and there's protocols in place and chains of custody in place and documentation, and then that is sent off to a lab, and then we get the results back, usually that night, if not then the next day. And so it's a lot of hands-on, it's a lot of students, additional students in our health rooms where potentially 6 students would be. And we're just trying to eliminate that if we could until we get back to a moderate spread.
Thank you.
So this is Jada, Mr. Caldwell. Down here I see it says where this also adds a burden to the nurses at a time we expect contact tracing to again be a significant part of their responsibilities. Are we no longer contracting that out?
We are contracting it out, but it is so massive right now that even with that, we use the nurses for that.
So the nurses are still doing contact tracing
They are.
in addition to the company we contracted with?
That's right, just in order to keep up with the hundreds and hundreds that we're dealing with right now.
Okay. I would like more than anything to get the nurses some help. I mean, can we not contract with an additional company?
Well, we could certainly, investigate anything that would be at your pleasure. We have gone, this is our second group that we've used, and it's actually run through CDC and DHEC, and we asked for the number that we asked for, and I think we have gotten 11. I may not be exactly right about that number. We could certainly request more, or we could investigate other venues, but of course, or not other venues, but other agencies and things. But there are costs involved in that, and we would certainly hope that we are actually, hopefully, getting very close to a peak, and we can see some relief within the next few weeks. Is what our hope is. But certainly, if we can always investigate additional help. I'm never opposed to that.
Mr. Caldwell, correct me if I'm wrong, but with the company that we contract with, they handle more or less the administrative side of the contact tracing. They do not possess a physical presence within the schools, and therefore I think that's, to your question, the nurses are the ones, and nurses and administrative staff are the ones who are physically
That's right.
going into the rooms, and obviously, anytime those numbers go up, then the job becomes more difficult, more problematic, and so I think that might be some of the pressure the nurses are feeling there as well, is that while they may have lost some of the administrative side of it, they certainly haven't lost the hands-on side of it. Is that correct?
That's right, and the hands-on side of it increases daily.
Thank you. I mean, that was, when I just read that, when I was reading over this before the board meeting, I was thinking, wow, is there any way we can get them any help? But also, I mean, I think drug testing is a deterrent. I have a teenage daughter, and he's still in school. I mean, he thought it was great when he heard that we were no longer drug testing. So I would kind of like, I mean, even if it's, 2% drug test, 2% of our student athletes and student drivers, just so the students know that there's still that little tiny chance that you might be the one that gets pulled today. I mean, how do you feel about that?
Again, I present this as a complete suspension. I will certainly fulfill the wishes of the board. In my opinion, I would like to suspend it until we can do it with fidelity, instead of having to kind of measure what does 2% look like and that sort of thing.
Okay.
But obviously, we will implement this at the board's pleasure.
Thank you.
Board, any other questions? All right, so we have a motion to temporarily suspend policy JJIE, student drug testing program, and JJIER, administrative rule due to COVID-19 until we return to moderate spread. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And the motion carries.